Welcome, everybody, to the Mando Fan Show. I'm John. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday night. That's it. We're putting a bow on Season 3 because The Mandalorian Season 3 is come and gone, but we're here one more time to have a more casual hangout, talking and looking back on Season 3 of The Mandalorian and our overall thoughts now that we've seen the whole thing, because we've gone each step of the way, but now that we've seen the whole thing, maybe things feel and are taken in a bit differently. So we're here to do all that. And with me, as always, is James and Lacey. But it is time to hang up the helmet until next time. Which, what do you guys think? 2025 then? It's like pairing with Celebration again. Season 4 of Mando, which we know is already written. Jon Favreau took care of that. So we're good there. So maybe they get filming this fall or something. But thank you to everybody who are joining us live in the chat. Appreciate that very, very much. We hope you've had fun with us along this ride on the Mando Fan Show this year. It's been a great time. James, Lacey, just looking back on our show itself, how'd you feel about this year and our guests? And I'm sure you guys had as much fun as I did anyway.
Yeah, Lacey, take it away.
Well, I always love doing these live shows because we get to engage with you guys in the chat, and even people that don't get to watch it live, they come back and leave comments or let us know on Twitter or social media, Instagram, that you guys are watching, and it means so much to us because sometimes you just feel like you're speaking into a void and you don't know who's listening. So when you have these moments where we get to engage with you guys and talk about these things, and you guys pick up on stuff that we might not catch at first, or it reminds us to talk about certain things because there's so many things that happen in these episodes, especially only being 40 minutes. It's like some of them are so packed that you can go a full hour talking about one segment of the episode without ever mentioning this other thing.
Right,
And plus, I think this season we had some really, really awesome guests.
Definitely.
A lot of people that I've been like dying to chat with. So that was a big kind of moment for me, is just like, you know, having Jedi Manda on, and Kevin from Toying Around on, and Children of the Watch, who we're big fans of. Like, all these people that we get to have come chat Mando with us is always just such a wonderful time, and just reminds us that like we all love Star Wars. It's a good time.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, The Mandalorian is like kind of peak Star Wars, you know what I mean? Unless there's like a movie out or something, like this is that time that we get to really get excited and have new people coming in and saying like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this show existed, and become part of a new community, or become a little bit more aware of how Star Wars is handled sometimes online, like as far as like they think about it on a daily basis, or they're talking with their local friends or whatever, but they aren't always aware that there are like shows or podcasts or whatever that are constantly talking about this stuff. So they all of a sudden have that inkling of like, I wonder if there's a Star Wars podcast. Do you think one exists? And then there's like opening up the whole world of like how much
You have
there
no
is out
idea.
there. Yeah, exactly. So it's an exciting time for a lot of new, I don't want to say new Star Wars fans, but new to like what we do and our little bubble of Star Wars world. So the Mando Fan Show is wonderful for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, to add on to the comments about the live chat, like sometimes we'll be in the pocket in a conversation and someone will hit us with a thought about it, and it'll redirect the conversation. Like, oh, I didn't even think about that this could have happened to, you know, and it just adds to the conversation, which makes that live element cool. So I agree with both of you there. And yeah, the guests, you know, who else? We had, you know, Star Wars Explained on. Well, Alex joined us. We had Mark Newbold, who subbed in for us last minute, right before Celebration, which was amazing. Just a great time this season, and I look forward to
Peter and Kitra
again. Yeah, Ordinary Adventures. I mean, we've had a big time park vloggers. We've had so many different walks of life and people connected to the Star Wars fan space. And just when you get to have that conversation with people, and just like a live chat, it's just amazing. So it's been a lot of fun, and we are gonna, you know, TRB Live is gonna keep going, starting next Thursday. So the live element will still be here, and of course
May the 4th.
Day after on May the 4th will be our return to TRB Live Thursdays. But don't forget, you know, when Ahsoka comes around, we're gonna be doing live shows for that too. It's just not gonna be the Mando Fan Show, that's all. But we have a great show here today. We don't really have any sort of directive or anything. There are a couple things we're going to talk about in terms of what cast members and crew members have said about this season, which has been interesting. Obviously, the Tamara Morrison stuff, elephant in the room, what everybody's been sort of talking about his comments recently at a convention in Australia. And then Katie Sackhoff, very candid on Christian Harloff's show, talking about stuff that was supposed to happen in season 2 and how that impacted season 3 and a lot of craziness. And then just having a conversation about the season, like we talked about. So I guess to kick things off, James and Lacey, did this season, when you look back to, we had our bold guest episodes, which is supposed to be fun, but also just speculating for real on this season and your expectations heading into the season, did season 3 match your expectations? And did it go the way you thought it would go? James, why don't you start us off?
I mean, I kind of remember thinking that this season to me was going to be the one where all the Mandalorians reunite and kind of come together, and you get that like shot of like, someone with the darksaber, and then like over the hill, like they all come up, and like obviously it didn't happen exactly like that, but I think like the scope of this was the season where all the Mandalorians unite definitely did happen. And it was in different ways, but very exciting ways. Especially, chapter 23 and 24 specifically, being really big on that front. So, I mean, I think in general, like I'm pretty happy with this season, especially, it's going to be that like you're looking back at like the 5 seasons or whatever it is that Mandalorian. It's like, I don't think season 3 is going to be one that people are like, well, that was a complete trash season or anything, I think a lot of really cool stuff happened.
Yeah. And like you said, a very big, heavy duty, like 2-headed monster ending to really add weight to the season. Lacey, how about you?
I thought this season was going to be way more depressing. Like, I think we all went into it thinking it was going to be like super dark, and it ended on such a positive note that was like, even thinking back to my live watch with you guys on Patreon, I was just in shock. Like, you can see at the end that I'm like, so everyone's cool? Like, everyone's just like, all right, no one's dead?
They win? They won?
Like, just like hanging out at their house, playing with frogs. Like, all right, I'm it. And it was like completely not what I expected, because going in, we kept getting these interviews from people being like, it's going to be darker. It's going to have a darker tone. It's going to be a little grittier, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh God, everyone's dying. Because that's like my immediate thought with Star Wars is they're like, oh, you like this character? We're going to kill them. But I'm going to be honest, despite it having wonderful moments with like the Incellans and like so many cool creatures and really beautiful, happy moments, I don't think for me it overpowered season 2. I still think season 2 is my favorite season. I think so far, obviously there's season 4. So far, season 2 just had so many killer moments and so many like interesting adventures that, from the Crate Dragon to like Ahsoka showing up to like all this stuff. And then Luke Skywalker shows up at the end. Like, I'm sorry, you're going to tell 7-year-old Lacey that like, that's not the best thing that could have happened. Like,
Yeah.
It's hard for that to be topped. And I think they knew that going into this season, like, how do you top Luke Skywalker? But I think it's also was an important season because it allowed, especially the Mandalorian, to have a lot of character development. Like, he grew a lot from like the person you meet in season 1, episode 1 to now is a completely different person. And I'm interested to see where this journey takes him next, especially because Carson Teva's involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I thought this season definitely had some heavy, dark moments, but it wasn't anything that felt like, the dark parts of Game of Thrones or something like that. And it was
Right.
Like Paz Vizsla's death was like just brutal, and just because of how slow
It
it
was
was,
very brutal.
tough to watch. And then, Dr. Pershing getting turned into, whatever happened to him, and that's kind of dark. But we were also coming off of Andor, which was very dark. So this, no matter how dark this
I
got,
think that's
it
why I
probably
was so shocked. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
they're happy?
Yeah. And you're right. When you brought up season 2, I'm like, well, what happened in season 2? And then I'm thinking like all the stuff you just listed, and then also like that Bill Burr episode where Pedro
Oh
had his
my
helmet off.
gosh. And Bill
Like,
Burr had like one of the best monologues in Star Wars.
yeah, the very serious
Mhm.
sort of Tarantino type of one-shot conversation.
Even though he didn't
Very,
want to be in Star Wars. That's what makes me laugh the
I
hardest.
know.
Is Jon Favreau's like, "You want to be in Star Wars?" And he's like, "Not really." He's like, "Come on." And he's just like, "Okay, fine."
He's like known for making fun of it, so he was a
Yeah.
little bit like, it's probably going to come back at me like all the
Yeah.
clips that I've said
So-
of making fun of
Right.
Star Wars people.
Well, I mean, sure, the pay's good. But and then speaking of those types of cameos, like this season, I have to. It's never gonna be one of those things where I like
We have to
change my
talk
mind
about
on
it because we got out of this, guys. We got out of talking about the Lizzo episode because we were
Yeah,
traveling in celebration, and I know a lot
I
of
did
people have been
not.
asking us.
Yeah.
We thought we happily skipped that episode.
Well, and they skipped it too. So if you notice, like, so I'll just say, the chapter 22 I didn't like very much at all, and I can't see myself ever revisiting it. And it felt like, in looking back now in the season, someone will have to, try to convince me of this. I don't see how that episode had any impact on anything moving forward. So I have this wacky conspiracy theory about this now because of the stuff Tamara Morrison just said, saying like he got a call for the Mandalorian. He was supposed to be in it. Was that episode supposed to be with Boba Fett and they did a complete rewrite last minute? And that's how they put, like, it felt like a very off the path, even so much so that when they did the previews for the next episode, it didn't refer to this episode at all. It skipped it completely. So I don't, it's just
My
a
question
weird
is-
moment in this whole
Yes.
story.
The question I have, which I would love to ask, like Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau, is if you're gonna bring all the Mandalorians together, and you're gonna have Book of Boba Fett, where he's like, "Hey, I got a guy that can help," or Fennec Shan's like, "I got a guy," and they need help, wouldn't they then call him back and be like, "Hey, remember that time we helped you out? Like, we need your help again." And
Yeah.
you're not gonna have who is pretty much before the Mandalorian,
Right.
be in this epic battle of they're taking back Mandalore.
And he goes to Tatooine in the second episode. He's right there.
That's what I don't understand. To me, that just doesn't make sense. Like, you can't build up all this stuff between them and Boba Fett in Book of Boba Fett being like, "I can't stay here. It's all you, Cobb Vanth," and then be like, MIA. It just
Yeah.
felt weird to me. It was very weird. And I love Tim
Yeah.
Morrison, and I hope he gets as much
Mhm.
screen time and whatever that he wants.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
really sure what when it comes to his comments about, because we saw that video of him like practicing lines or whatever. So obviously at some point they sent him something and we're like, yeah, we're gonna get you involved in some other stuff. Whether that was season 2 of Book of Boba Fett or it was just appearances in this season or whatever, but I don't know exactly what happened or where along the lines they decided to change things and just not bring him back at all. I don't think he's gone forever. I
No.
can't. Yeah. I can't imagine a scenario where they just don't ever refer to Boba Fett again. So I think he just didn't
No,
make the cut
yeah.
this season.
It
Which
is
is-
weird though, because if he's saying that he was originally supposed to come back and they had basically hinted at him, because in the beginning, before the Mandalorian came out, they had that poster with all the helmets. It wasn't Boba Fett's helmet on it.
I believe so.
Wasn't that whole poster? It was like Bo-Katan's
Yeah, I don't-
helmet, so-and-so's helmet, Boba Fett's helmet, Mandalorian's helmet.
Well, also his quote is important because he said, he literally says, "I was supposed to be in the Mandalorian season 3, but nobody rang me. I was waiting for the
seems
phone call."
Poor guy.
So that means he saw the scripts and he was told, "You're in this episode," but they didn't call him to fly in, and that they must have just cut it. So that's where I'm saying, like, if you had to pick one in this block of episodes, which one would you be like, yeah, that one probably doesn't fit as much? It just makes me think, like, you have Lizzo who got on the show because she wore Yoda ears or Grogu ears or something, and it's like that bothered me a little. And I get people like Lizzo, and she's a great fan. I don't think that should be the qualifications for you to take an actor's job. And just, like, if you want to be an extra and play an alien, that's fine. But she had a pretty sizable role that probably could have went to someone who's a good actor. I don't know how much we want to get, like, let's do this person a favor because they like Star Wars versus let's put an actor in here. That's just my personal opinion. I'm nothing against her. It just was a little weird to me. And then add Jack Black to it and Christopher Lloyd, and it's like, wow.
My whole thing is
So-
it just took me out because we've had conversations like this before about Star Wars and how they get unknown actors because they become that character. And like, as soon as you see someone like even Jude Law, I love Jude Law, but seeing him in Skeleton Crew, I'm like, that's Jude Law.
Right.
Like, just when you have these franchise films, whether it be Marvel, Hunger Games, anything, there were moments in those films that like I'd see certain actors and I'd be like, oh, that's so and so. Like even Ant-Man, I'm like, that's Paul Rudd. Like he's playing Ant-Man, but it's playing Paul Rudd.
I think
Ryan
that
Reynolds
was my
is
take.
Deadpool.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, I'm
That
not
was
finished.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm not finished. So then basically when I saw the episode and Lizzo came on screen, I am a gigantic Lizzo fan. I listen to her literally every day. And immediately I was like, is that Lizzo? And John knows because he was sitting next to me in the airport when I was watching it. And I turned to him and I said, is that Lizzo? And then I looked back and I said, is that Jack Black? It was just like, it was a lot. It was a lot. It took me out of it. Go ahead, James.
When we were coming to Celebration, John was like, what did you think of the episode? And I was like, I thought it was fine. You know, it was whatever. And I think he said, I knew you'd like it or whatever. And I was like, I didn't necessarily like it or love it. I didn't think it was like a great episode coming out of the season. But what I would say is, and as people ask me that same question, because obviously it seems like the major response behind that particular episode was that people were taken out of it, is I was always like, I know that the people who were putting on this show weren't trying to hide Jack Black. Like it wasn't.
I don't think they were trying to hide anyone.
Exactly. No. Like it wasn't a moment where they thought, well, he could slip into character and it will be really cool. I think they knew from the point, like the point of putting him in was that it was going to be like, oh, look at that. That's Jack Black. And like the point was to be like kind of excited. Like if you like Jack Black, now he's mixing with Star Wars. And so from the perspective of it took me out of the show, I was like, that was sort of the producer's point, is they were trying to take you out of the show. They wanted you to have that moment where you were like, I love Jack Black. I love Lizzo. And this is really cool because this is a moment where I get to see my favorite people in my favorite property, you know, or something like that. So I was like, you know, it didn't.
It was a weird choice. It was definitely a weird choice.
I also wonder.
And I don't know if Favreau made that choice, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
I don't think.
I wonder how the episode would have been received had it not had so many cameos either. Like if it only had one, like Christopher Lloyd or whatever.
I would have had a completely different reaction to that episode. I know I would have.
Well, anyway,
a lot of people.
There were 7 other episodes too, and I think we liked almost all of them. So I mean,
even that one had its moments that were cool. It's just out of all of them, I think that's the one that sticks out to me. That just felt weird.
Yeah, I mean that's the episode where she gets the Darksaber. So
yeah,
right,
you know,
right.
That's all you need to think about. But the season overall, though, it seems, at least for fans, the least well received overall. But I think it will age well because of what it is going to be involved with in terms of tying into other things going forward. I think it's setting a lot of building blocks that we aren't seeing yet. In terms of what they're going to do with the Mandalorians going forward and that sort of thing, and how all these people have now jockeyed and found their own position here. And some people are out, some people are dead, some people are new, some people are back in. So I think this season did a lot of, in my opinion, had more of a story than the previous seasons in terms of the story of the week thing. I just think people were expecting something different. I was too. I thought it was going to be like Bo-Katan versus Mando, like the Captain America and Iron Man Civil War thing. I was wrong there. But I enjoyed it. And I really do think that it's going to age better than people are taking it now.
Fair.
Just a positive thought on that. Now, what do you guys think of the some of the stuff Katie Sackhoff said? Because one of the things that was a takeaway from that interview she did on Christian Harloff's show was that, and when she debuted with Axe Woves and Casca Reeves, they shot the scene where he died in season 2, but they cut it from the episode, which means he's not dead. And then he obviously comes back this season.
Poe Dameroned it.
Yeah, and he was missing the rest of season 2. Remember, we were like, what happened to that guy? You
Yeah.
know, that's why people probably started speculating that he became evil or something. But it just turned out he died. They finished the rest of the shoot, and then they're like, we're cutting that scene. He's alive for season 3. Maybe that was Favreau writing season 3, and like, we got to cut that scene and we got to get that guy back in. But that's a big change because he had a way bigger like impact, way more impactful role than I ever would have imagined. He was a standout, I would say, this season.
He definitely had a Holdo moment where he's like, everybody get off the ship. I'm taking the ship.
Dude had an arc. He was a cameo, sort of like you're my right-hand soldier, not too many lines in season 2, to boom, this guy's having a big impact on this story. So I thought that was really cool.
In that episode is that, you know what I mean? She shows up, it all belongs to Axe now, you know, and it has the whole thing where he stands up and he's like, this is all me. Like, I don't know where you've been. I've been working on this, and I've got Star Destroyers with Mandalorian paint. I was when we were at the premiere, I was joking around about like, I need 10,000 gallons of red. You know, they're us in there.
Right, true.
We're
gonna be ready in a month.
Yeah,
I would say he on the good guy side, so to speak, and Katie O'Brien on the bad guy side, villain side, were two standouts because they both had previous like minor roles in previous seasons, and both were pretty elevated this season. And you know that's not the last we're going to see of Katie O'Brien's character. So I wonder if she's going to like show face in like these other shows as well, because I think a lot of these Mandalorians are certainly going to pop up. But so what do you guys think overall though? Like, was there disappointment that we didn't see Pedro Pascal at all? Because I certainly felt it a bit. I felt like we always sort of need it to trick our brain that he was always in the suit in a weird way, even though we know he isn't. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? You cool with that? First season to not show Pedro?
It bothered me. I thought that we should see him at least at some point, because if anything, to prove all those people on the internet wrong that were like, he hates the Mandalorian, he's getting fired. Like, how many times have we heard that? I would just love for him to show up. But at the same time, like, I also appreciate that this season they seem to give more credit to Brendan Wayne and Lateef. I don't know his last name. I'm blanking on his last name. Crowder. Yep. Their work in the role, because I feel like in previous seasons they kind of hit it a little bit. Not that they didn't deserve it, it's just they were trying to make Pedro be the star, which I understand. But this season they definitely gave them more of a credit, which I appreciate. But yeah, I mean, especially coming out of The Last of Us, where you saw his face every single week and people were putting up all these gifs and all these things about like, oh, Pedro's the best. And he was everywhere leading into The Mandalorian. Like, he did every interview, every video, everything. To then not see him once in the season was a little bit of a letdown. Like, I would have loved that end part where they're at the house to him have his helmet off in front of Grogu. Like, that would have made the episode and season for me.
That would have been great.
With his feet up, like just having his helmet off.
Yeah.
And even if they didn't show his face, but like maybe over his back looking at Grogu, like that would have been cool too.
I thought that's where they were going when he like adopted him as his official child. I was like, okay, so then maybe there's this rule that like within the family, you're allowed to have your helmets off or something along those lines. But it didn't end up happening. I'll say it didn't really bother me. I still kind of think that's the point of this character, is that he has the helmet on. And it's sort of that like Master Chief thing to me. Like, I get the voice and it's cool when he does take his helmet off, but I don't want to be waiting for it every season. And I think this was a good like thing for us, is saying like, well, he didn't at all third season. So you never know when it could happen. You know, it is only going to happen that morning when you're watching the episode and you're like, oh, it's happening, you know, kind of thing. And I think that's good, because otherwise you're just like, when's it going to happen this season? Because it happens once a season at least, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think it's important because a lot of people, you know, Pedro Pascal is like white hot right now in terms of popularity and notoriety. And he's almost like Elvis. I feel like the way people act around him, but it's like people will post stuff online about like the Mandalorian like posing against the wall and stuff. And they'll be like Pedro Pascal just being our daddy and stuff. It's like, no, that's probably Brendan Wayne being your daddy. And it just, I just want to, I think, you know, I always like making sure I talk about the people who are behind the curtain, you know, don't get the credit and stuff, because, you know, David Prowse for a long time has signed a lot of Darth Vader stuff, and he's Darth Vader in the costume. That's what these two dudes are. You know, Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder are the Mandalorian, and Pedro Pascal is pretty much the James Earl Jones. And I think they need to, they deserve just as much credit as David Prowse got over the years. So I think that's, you know, a legit point to bring up. Like, those guys do a lot of the heavy lifting, and Pedro Pascal's, you know, not shy to admit that. Like, these guys, you know, helped me bring it together. And Katie Sackhoff, going back to that interview we were talking about before, she'd said, like, yeah, it's 3 dudes who bring that, you know, character to life. And you think about Hayden Christensen and the team of 5 who brought Vader to life for Obi-Wan. Like, a lot goes into this stuff. So, you know, Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder obviously had to do a bit more than ever in this season, especially with how physical the season was too. So cheers to those two for sure. Come on the podcast, come hang out.
Absolutely.
So I saw someone in the comment, I think it was Frank Grande, brought up about the Mythosaur.
The
I mean,
Mythosaur.
we saw it
felt
at
like
the
they didn't really
end.
do anything with it. That's what he said.
They brought it back at the end to prove that that wasn't a vision. It was real. It was down there. So I think that's sort of saying, like, remember this because it's coming back. So I think it wasn't there just for this season.
And it was specifically Grogu is the one that sensed it, because he looked down into the water, and then that did like a nice transition into the water.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get Grogu riding on the back of a Mythosaur bursting through the surface of the water.
I think we sort of underestimated their ability to play the long game. Like, we saw that at the beginning of the season, and we were like, oh, well, then it'll be back by the end of the season. And it's like, nah, man, season 5 or like the other show 10 years from now that we'll do, you know, like, all their show,
or in the movie,
wrap up everything by the end of Rebels. And it's like,
the movie.
Man, by another show, we're gonna
get that Mythosaur on the big screen. Get that Mythosaur in IMAX. big Hollywood budget Mythosaur, not Manhattan Beach volume Mythosaur. You know,
I mean, I don't think that was Manhattan Beach. I think it was a separate visual effect. I don't think they had that on the volume.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Who knows what they do? That magic.
Manhattan Beach visual effects studio.
It was an actual creature in the water. They went into the ocean and they just put dots on it.
That's why I'm scared of the ocean, is what's in the ocean.
Giant squids alone. Like, I
saw a video of one the other day. It is terrifying. They're like in Tokyo Bay. I was like, we're going to Tokyo, aren't we? Oh yeah, we are.
Someone's like, I remember someone saying, this has nothing to do with the Mandalorian, but that's what's great about this recap episode. Someone brought up the other day about like, what, you know, because Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 is obsessed with UFOs and aliens, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure giant squids might be aliens, and they weren't originally here, and they just like the ocean terrifies me beyond all belief. There's things that just
very, very deep.
It's very scary. Yeah, dark, deep water. No thanks. So I would not be taking my helmet off if I was a Mandalorian, because I don't want to go into those waters. No, thank you. No, thank you.
So speaking of taking people out of the show, I saw a lot of complaints, and by a lot of complaints, I mean maybe like 5 people. But I want to know what you guys think. People were complaining about Dave Filoni's hat at the end of the episode. To me, it didn't bother me at all, because literally Cad Bane was wearing like the exact same hat.
I tweeted that.
But does it bother you guys that Dave Filoni was in the episode? Because some people were saying that was a cameo that took them out. Not Lizzo, not Jack Black.
There's no way that's true then. That's people looking for things to complain about. If like a blurry guy in the background who might be Dave Filoni took you out of a scene,
I took that more as an Easter egg. Like, if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, you know who Dave Filoni is.
Why wouldn't
Not many people outside of the Star Wars bubble know who Dave Filoni is.
Yeah. But Jack Black didn't do anything. Like, there's no way. That's just people saying things to say things. Oh, jeez.
That song is everywhere.
We went and saw it, and we went and saw that movie, and it was pretty good. But
I heard it was good.
I just was absolutely loving my son just watching. I mean, it was like him watching.
He watches
Yeah,
video game
I mean,
stuff
he's
online,
like sitting
right?
there just like all
Yeah.
of it's happening, all of it's coming together. Like that song's from Super Mario Odyssey, and this song is from this thing, and like, oh, that's a reference to this, and he knows, and there's clear pipes, and that's good. He's like, he knows all this stuff about Mario. So him watching it was like just Easter egg heaven, and he was like recognizing things that I wasn't gonna recognize. It was so cool to see him, but yeah, Jack Black in The Mandalorian. Coming off of all this, all the other publicity for Super Mario Brothers and stuff, is kind of a funny timing on that act. And it's funny too. I was thinking like Mandalorian season 2, as far as like cultural moments, like within Star Wars, like Ahsoka and probably Boba Fett were pretty big, but I think like the only big, huge cultural moment would be the Luke thing at the end, and everybody talking about it that day. The closest,
I think that's something that
in season 3,
transcended the
Right.
Luke thing, because I've seen so many TikToks of like people showing their parents the Luke moment. Like I showed
Right.
my parents the Luke moment, and they know nothing about the Mandalorian except Grogu. That is the only thing they know about the Mandalorian is Grogu.
Yeah. And the closest I would think in season 3 was like the Ahmed Best thing, where it was like you might have a fan showing somebody and being like, check this out, he is so cool, he got his redemption, remember him, he's the one who played the Jar Jar character, you know what I mean? But like that's probably it, as far as like I just don't think anything's ever going to touch that Luke moment, and it's always going to hold season 2 higher than anything they ever produce. And it's sort of like that expectations thing, like the expectations after season 2 are so high that it doesn't matter how good or bad season 3 is, it's just never going to be season 2 because of how it ended.
Yeah, there are 2 moments in The Mandalorian that I will never forget, and it's when you first see Grogu at the beginning, how I reacted to that, and straight up crying when Luke Skywalker came on screen. Like from the moment his ship flew in, I was like, "Is that?" And then you see his belt buckle, and you're like, "Is that?" And then you see his hand, you're like, "Oh my god!" And then you just lose it.
Yeah,
There's
and you're right.
nothing that's
Top
going to top
cultural
that.
moment from season 1, but the first episode showing Baby Yoda. It's like that moment, and then season 2's top would be Luke. Season 3's top,
I would say
Ahmed Best
probably.
is probably the closest.
For pop culture.
It's just, I just
Just
mean like
because of
just
the
like
weight
big, and
that
like people
has,
were online and people were talking and excited. Like I don't think anything in this season happened that was just like, oh my god, did you see The Mandalorian this week? Even the final episodes, which I think were probably like the biggest story thing that's ever happened in the show, like as far as like how many people were involved in the taking back of the planet and fighting Moff Gideon at the level that he is at.
But I don't think
like those are the biggest episodes as far as the story goes, I think. But yet it wasn't like the world was watching those and being like, you have to watch episodes 23 and 24. The closest I would think is like, yo, you remember the prequels? Check out this week's Mandalorian.
I don't think that's
like a big redemption.
I think that's a distant third if that's the one for season 3 compared to 1 and 2.
But that's my point. Is I'm saying that's the biggest. I think unless you can think of another big cultural moment from season 3.
Well, I don't
think there were any, honestly.
I
think people talked about it for the day or 2 that it happened, and then that was it. Go ahead, John. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think live action Zeb is the same level for Star Wars fans as seeing Ahmed Best, because I think if you showed that scene to people and the doors open, they're like, I don't know who that is. Be like, oh, Dad, that's the guy who played Jar Jar Binks. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think Dad, that's who plays Jar Jar Binks, is a bigger connection point than hey, that's Zeb.
That's where I'm coming from.
Like, I think I'm literally talking about it for my dad, so that'd be like, all right, I don't care.
Yeah, I think
my dad would be even worse.
Like
if he said
people
Zeb.
seeing
like,
it. Yeah, I think you're right. Like they see Baby Yoda, they have an instant reaction. They see Luke, they have an instant reaction. They see the other guy and they go, I don't know who that is. And somebody has to go, you don't know who that is? Oh, here, let me explain. And they go, oh.
But to that point, though, I'm glad that this season didn't feel it needed to do that. I'm glad that, and I said this on last week's Mando fan show, I'm glad that the series or the season finale didn't have to have one of those. And then Leia showed up and helped them and realized that she may have the
Right,
Force or
right.
something. Like it just stood on its own.
Mhm.
It was the Mandalorian. All the action figures and all players from the Mandalorian are serving this story here, and it was still an awesome finale. Whereas in the others, you had the Darksaber reveal at the end of season 1. Oh, the Darksaber, he's out bunching on the TIE Fighter. That's where the Darksaber is. And then Luke Skywalker in season 2. This one was just like, no, we're here now. The Mandalorian, people are here to see the Mandalorian, not to see who shows up in the Mandalorian. And I think that is a testament to the strength of this show. Even though people maybe feel like this was the best season, I think it now has its own solid footing, where now it's at the point where this show is becoming a launching pad for other shows. And it sort of happened like right before our eyes. Before it was this, one character starting this new thing. We're going to try it out in Disney Plus. It becomes a hit. And now look at what it is doing for Star Wars. It's not the lifeboat, because we are getting into those new movies now, but it's definitely the flag bearer. I know people love Andor and stuff like that, but Mandalorian is like the Super Bowl right now for Disney Plus Star Wars shows, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I do have to argue the other side of that, though, which is because it didn't have a moment like that, I don't think it connected to audiences outside the diehard Star Wars fans. I don't think there was that connection that if you're
I
a
don't know.
couple episodes in and a moment hasn't happened, that someone's going, oh, I need to go watch that. Like someone that isn't a big Star Wars fan. Whereas Luke and Grogu in general, people were like there are so many Star Wars fans now that started with The Mandalorian. That started
Yeah.
because they were like, oh my God, what is this? What is this Baby Yoda? I need to go watch it. Oh my God, Luke is back. I need to go see how that happened. I don't think by having no moments like that this season, there was nothing to attract someone that maybe isn't the biggest Star Wars fan. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just, I think that's what happened.
I totally agree with that, but I'm also sitting thinking like, how do you fix that? Or is that like just a problem that is, well, it's a lose-lose situation. We already did the biggest thing we could do. And now if we try to top that, it's just going to be us trying to top that. So let's not try to top that, and let's just do a good show. And it's sort of like at the end of the day, people will go like, oh man, I wish it would have been able to top that. And it's like, there's nothing we could do. We already did the number one thing you can do. I don't even know at the time that was such a big thing. Like what could you possibly do that would be bigger than that? I almost can't even fathom it,
I'm glad, like, just from me, sometimes I'm not as worried about something like The Mandalorian grabbing everybody. I can say this.
You don't work for Disney. That's not really your job.
No, I'm a fan,
Yeah.
Season 2 is probably my favorite, but this season, I can say this season had the moment I laughed the hardest, and also had the moment I felt like darkness and like despair the hardest. And I think some had some of the best action sequences. So I think it's gonna be one of those weird like I'm telling you this, like for me, it's such a complex and conflicting season, because I had such a good time along the ride, and I just feel like it's going to be the one that I pull from the most. It has a lot. It's loaded, and I feel like it. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to get better. It's going to age better than other things have. So that's my hope anyway. And I think we're going to look back on this season differently based on the other things that come after it, because this is a pivotal moment for not just The Mandalorian, but also, of course, the other stuff that we're going to be getting into. But the whole movie thing now has me so twisted up, because I just figured, oh, Mando's going to end and Grogu's going to go on. But now, like, Mandalorian, the show can end, and it's not going to have an ending, because the movie's probably going to be where it all ends. Like, they're not going to go show movie back to The Mandalorian. I don't
Right. Like the movie just happens to take place
No,
at
it's
one
a
point, and
culmination,
then they
they
do
said.
a fifth
Yeah.
season or whatever. Yeah.
So if
I don't
Din
know.
Djarin's going out, he's going out in the movie. If Bo-Katan's going out, she's going out in the movie. Is Ahsoka, like, that movie's going to have like a lot at stake, because a lot of these people aren't around during the war against the First Order. I know
But you
people
also have
could be-
30 years.
Yeah, and I know people could be doing different things also and that sort of stuff, but this really just feels like they're going to use this time to tell this story. All these characters.
It seems interesting too to have Dave Filoni sort of write that and put that whole thing together, that movie. He's like currently working on it now, but he also doesn't know if they're going to do Ahsoka season 2. He also doesn't know if they're going to do Skeleton Crew season 2. You know what I mean? It's like those shows could be big hits, or they could be like Book of Boba Fett, where people like aren't feeling them surprisingly, you know, or whatever. And then it just didn't. And they're like, oh, you know, or Rangers of the New Republic, like something happens. And then it's like, okay, well, I can't incorporate that. So what is he doing right now when he's writing that story? Because it probably involves like, you know, certain aspects of where he thinks it's going to go. But then if audiences don't respond to these shows, or they do, you know, and then they're like, oh, well, we can't do that movie until we do Ahsoka season 3 because money, 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 money. You know,
the other thing I worry is, does the movie impact the story in the way they were going to tell it? John will be back. Is the story changing at all because of, you know, how the story is going right now, currently? You're muted, James. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I also said bye, John. Yeah. You mean the story of the movie?
Yeah, and of course,
exactly.
My cats are now deciding to argue and fight together.
Because that's what I'm saying is like, I don't know exactly how I would be working on a movie right now, other than, well, I know that I want Ahsoka to die there, or I know that I want the Mandalorian to give Grogu that thing that makes him official, or what, you know what I mean? I want those moments there. But literally, like everything else, like all the details and stuff, it's like you wouldn't be able to work on them until, you know, until someone finally says, okay, we're not going to do Ahsoka season 3. It's going to be season 2. And then this, it's going to be Skeleton Crew season 2. And then that, and it's going to be Mandalorian season 5. And then that, you know, or whatever. And then, you know what I mean? Someone's going to have to put that line down, and then they're going to write up to that point, and then they'll know what they're doing, and then they can finally fill in the details and finalize that movie 2 years after they finish working on those shows.
Right.
Which is crazy, which makes me then think, if you're looking at that timeline of 25, 27 and further back, then at that point, it makes me wonder how many of these shows are only going up to 25 and 26. Because if Filoni's movie is the 27.
Yeah, I don't really know. My big concern is always at the story. How is the story changing? And I know that we've heard rumblings about how Book of Boba Fett changed because people higher up made choices about Grogu coming back earlier than not in the story.
Right.
You know, we're hearing these interview comments from Katie Sackhoff about how the story's changed. We're hearing from Tamara Morrison about how he was supposed to come back this season and no one ever called him. I just have this worry that as soon as it gets too many hands in the pot, too many people involved, that the story goes in a way that they can't control because there's too many people factoring in. Going off of what you were saying, James, I'm excited that it's only Dave Filoni. But I also know from what they said about Dave Filoni at Celebration is that he's not the person to say no. He's the person to say, okay, let's see if your idea how it can work. And I'm just worried that, like, is the story going to get too crazy? Because I think that's something that also suffered with the sequel trilogy that we've heard a couple times, is too many people got involved, especially with the Rise of Skywalker, and too many changes were being made like daily, that I just want it to be a good story. That's my hope.
There's always that overarching thing, and we joked about it before about well, Disney certainly cares about blank, and usually it's that bottom line. And the reports are consistently out there that Disney Plus definitely lost a lot of subscribers, and as did many streaming platforms. We're in post-pandemic, people are back out and about, and that's going to happen. But you can totally see that maybe Disney is looking a bit further over the shoulders of the creation of these shows and saying, like, all right, well, this Boba Fett thing, you know, it was mixed reviews, didn't, you know, have the best viewership. How about instead of bringing that guy back into this show, you bring in someone from one of our next shows, and then you get, you know, Kale Organa, the salad pirate, Gorian Shard, for Skeleton Crew or whatever. And maybe those are the types of changes that are made. I don't know, or it could be just financial. I don't know how that works with Tamara Morrison, his actor fees versus you know bringing Lizzo in and you know paying her minimal. I have no idea, you know, but it's certainly possible that that's stuff that happens. I'd like to think that Jon Favreau has autonomy to tell the stories he wants, but at the end of the day, you know, he's working for a major studio.
Yeah, he does answer to people.
Who is owned by the biggest media corporation in the world. So it's
surprising to me that it almost feels like Jon Favreau answers to that media conglomerate more than Tony Gilroy does. Like just the news around Andor and everything, Tony's like, yeah, I have a story in mind, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I don't think that Tony has the pressure that the Mandalorian has because of Grogu and Baby Yoda and the just impact it had on pop culture. I think Disney just knows like there's so much money riding on this thing. Yeah, toys, merchandise, all this other stuff. Like it has to be handled well. Whereas I don't think Andor is making a ton of money from merchandising.
Yeah, I think Andor is sort of like we can take a step back here from popularity and viewership to get some sort of acclaim and sort of accreditation, award consideration. You know, this is cinema. This isn't, you know, this is a film, not a movie type of thing, and maybe get more prestige credit that way. But I don't know.
I guess it's just interesting because wouldn't you? I mean, I don't know. I guess like wouldn't you just think The Mandalorian would also just be awesome if it just was good like that too?
But when it comes down to it, we'll may never find out unless someone writes a book in 20 years about all this. But I can't see Favreau, who always wanted to do a Boba Fett story, cutting Boba Fett from season 3 if that was his plan. So someone else made the decision. If I'm using common sense,
yeah. And it probably comes back on the fact that they can just look at numbers and go, Book of Boba Fett, not as hot as you promised it would be.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be Tamara Morrison ruffled feathers with things he said, and they didn't want to bring him back. They didn't want to pay him his fee. They didn't want to pay to fly him out for a one day. There could be a lot of things. You know, your budget for this episode is blank. Do you want to spend this percentage on it to fly that guy out here, have him in there for 30 seconds of footage, screen time? And they're probably like, oh, God, all right. You know, it's brutal. But Lacey, I know we have super chats, right?
We do. So first up is David Ford. Thank you so much for the super chat. He said, stop arguing about cameos. We're not arguing. We're discussing, David. And using flamethrowers on each other during fights over whose barbecue is authentic. Gideon's is the true BBQ of Mandalore. I could go for some barbecue right now. Not of Gideon, but like just barbecue in general.
Like ribs, some pulled pork.
Did you guys, by chance, speaking of that, did you happen to see there was a photo going around of a little hieroglyphic from Rebels that shows the character doing the thing and then like a little baby or like a childlike Yoda in front of him?
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants to just like get on Twitter or something like that, I looked at those and I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know if it's intentional, but if it's not, it's something that Dave Filoni would be the kind of guy who would look at and go, sure, I'll retroactively make that my intention.
Fresh out of tinfoil. Damn.
Well, thank you, Matt, for the super chat. This is actually Matt's first super chat ever on the show. So thank you, Matt. We really appreciate it. You picked a good episode. A recap. He said, do you think we'll see an older bounty hunter grown up Grogu in season 4? Can't be a baby forever, LOL. Thank you, TRB. I truly enjoy what you three do. Go Yanks.
Yes. Go Yanks. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
My gosh.
No, I don't think we're going to see a grown up Grogu yet. I think they got some time. They can do like little kid Grogu. They can do teenage Grogu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like
time jump.
I'm looking at Groot. They've milked Groot for every age at this at this point.
Adult, like full grown Grogu, you know, maybe around that Rey movie.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, that's about as big as he ever gets, but he's still like small. Obviously, he's Yoda sized. I think that like it's kind of surprising. It's one of those things I almost wish somebody would do it. Like, put the lineup of like, this is Grogu in every episode, and you can just sort of look at that timeline and go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think he changed at all," and he totally has changed a
Yeah.
lot. He's
Yeah.
grown up in the show. So I think it's one of those things where if they were going to do season 4 and Grogu is still in it, I think he's going to still look the same, but they'll age him up ever so slightly, just like
Yeah.
how they have been doing to the past 3 seasons.
They definitely have, because if you look at him from season 1 to now, he does look a little older. Yeah.
Yeah,
And those
I mean,
he's
even
pupils
like
walking
kind of get
around.
smaller and smaller.
that first episode, even like just past that, it's like he looks so much like a baby in that very first episode.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much. We really
Yes.
appreciate your
Thanks,
super
man.
chat.
Thanks, David, too.
And David too. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, any other aspects of season 3 you wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't address yet, or did
The
you get talked about
Incellens,
a lot?
the
The Incellens?
puppeteering, the puppeteers, and the creatures that were just so. I feel like we got more creatures in this season of Mandalorian than we have in any live action show. Like from the Navarro
yeah.
kind of town to, I don't know. I loved it. And I love, especially with the Incellens, they brought back Shirley Henderson. I love how they had those people puppeteering the different ones, and they probably used the same mold as Rise of Skywalker. I just liked how they've continually made these connections to the sequel trilogy that are explaining things that maybe aren't clear yet.
Yeah. And it's also just fun. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it made me think of like being a kid and watching like Fraggle Rock, where
Labyrinth,
they're in the human world, and then they go into that little mouse hole, and all of a sudden it's this whole puppet city, and that's the Mandalorian giving us like a time out. Let's have some fun for a few minutes, and we'll take you back to our regularly scheduled program. I love it.
What I would give to get to sit in that little set, that little
Oh, I
mini
know.
set that he sits in, that like
Yes.
there were some of the, like you said it earlier, John, there were some of the funniest moments in the Mandalorian this season, from the
so
no,
funny.
no,
Yeah.
yes, no, to that scene where he's sitting there and Carl Weathers is going through the door being like, they said this, and he's like looking at him like, I know what they said. Funniest, if not one of the funniest scenes in Star Wars in general. Like, those moments are what I love about Star Wars the most, like the weird creature stuff, because like you just said, John, that's the stuff that I got into when I was little, that I'm still
It's
into as a grown
fun.
adult.
Yeah.
Of just wild things that I could never imagine, and with worlds and creatures and all these things that have their own personalities and
Mhm.
languages, and it's what makes Star Wars to me,
Yeah.
beyond the lightsabers and the fighting and the wars, like
Yeah.
those little moments.
I think
I
I think
loved them.
that's why
Yeah.
I liked Gorian Shard so much. Is
Me
because
too.
he had that.
I didn't like him. Everyone loved that guy. I did
I
not like
love
it.
it.
I
See,
felt like he was like,
That's the
like
closest to the Labyrinth I thought that we got.
no, absolutely not. I think he was very value brand Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. Like store
man.
brand.
Davy Jones
Hal
to me,
did both.
though, is like CG
I
at
know.
its best, and this was
I know.
puppeteering at its best. Like,
Yeah.
Gorian
this
Shard
reminded
wasn't
me
a
more
puppet.
of Little Shop of Horrors or something.
Gorian was
Yeah.
definitely CG.
No, I think it was a puppet.
Yeah, it's a puppet.
Are we sure? Are we
Yeah.
sure about that?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's if there's CG on him, like his eyes or something, then you know there's that. But I think like in
I
general,
like that.
was what was exciting
what,
about him.
What ILM and the creature team will love is that we aren't sure, which means they did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then, to turn that around too, like the very next episode, we got that like crazy robot thing.
Yeah.
From,
Oh,
episode
yes.
2.
Yeah.
And it's like that thing was really cool too. And it had like again, like to bring up like Halo, it kind of reminded me of some of the mechanical sort of species and stuff that happens in Halo as well. So I was like, man, that thing is just straight sci-fi. That thing was really cool too. In a dark and scary kind of way, almost reminiscent of like the spiders from the earlier seasons. which is interesting because I think that was also episode 2, right?
Yeah, and that
But,
was old Macquarie art. I don't know about this
Right.
season, but it's cool that they go back to that stuff that was designed for, like, Empire Strikes Back, and all of a sudden you see Carson Teva entangled with these spiders. It's so cool. But yeah, I think this season did lay a bunch of groundwork. I think maybe the biggest one that seems obvious is the Adelphi Rangers. Now they have their watering hole that's sort of like their headquarters, and you got Carson Teva leading the charge and the other pilots, and you got Zeb there. So I think, that whole Rangers of the New Republic thing it could certainly still become something. But I think we'll see all them fully realized in that movie as well. So they'll have that. So the sky battle covered at the end of the movie. Someone else will have the 1-to-1 battle, Mando versus Thrawn or whatever, and then there'll be the ground battle. And they're laying all that with the Mandalorians. So they're laying all that groundwork now, and it's going to be in that big, awesome movie. So I think that's why I really do think season 3 eventually, as more stuff comes out, will be looked at more favorably. Not to say that it wasn't. I've loved it. I give a couple of episodes a 9+, the last 2. So, and then I know we have another super chat before we give maybe some final thoughts.
Yeah, so Jake Houchins, thank you so much, Jake. How's it going?
Yeah,
He says he's out of. First of all, this is his first super chat ever, so thank you for giving us a super chat. He said, "I am out watching hockey, but just wanted to stop by and say thanks for the awesome content, and this is the way.
Thanks,
this is the way.
Thank you. Enjoy the game.
I am gonna miss the armorer and all her suspicious activity that I still strongly believe that she's up to something.
Still, I'm done. I felt so bad that I fell asleep.
I'm really good at holding a grudge, and there's something about her.
I think it's her voice. I think it's the way she talks.
She does have a talk. She, like a certain vibe, if you will, that people joke that I do a good impression, but it's literally the same tone for everything that she says.
Yeah. When we started this
one
episode,
day, so it was like extra good.
I know. I'm not sick anymore. Which again, I said I'm sick because we were with Alex Damon, Star Wars Explained, and he was like, "This is a great episode." I was like, "Yeah, I'm funnier when I'm sick because I don't know what I'm saying."
I barely remember doing that. I was.
This is the way.
When we started this episode, I was thinking, well, this is the season, I said when all the Mandalorians are united. And then I almost said bye Din Djarin. I was like, well, it was kind of more Bo-Katan. It's actually mostly the armor. like who's the person who really united all of the Mandalorian people? In a way, like it was sort of mandated by the armor. She sort of like looked at everybody sitting in the room where she's like, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you.
But also, Grogu getting Paz and Axe to stop fighting.
That's a big point too. Like I think, and I hate going on the record for things, but I think chapter 23 might be my new favorite episode. I think it beat season 2, episode 1.
Dude,
what chapter is that? Can you tell me? I'm
the one
it's the one we watched live at Celebration. But I just think like I was coming out of that and I was like, you guys don't even know. It was like 5 set pieces. Like you think back at that episode, you're like, that's the one where all the huge ships were coming over the sand dunes and stuff, and there's just so many great things about that episode that I was like, I can't believe all this is happening. And to end with the Paz Vizsla stuff, which has been sort of like a personal favorite character of mine in the show, just because of the way he looks and the way, I don't know. He was just such a cool character, and to like give him that moment at the end, I was just like, this episode was incredible.
Well, that's one of the best things about Star Wars characters is that you don't have to explain why it's your favorite. It could just be your favorite. It's just, hey, I like how this looks. I like how this sounds. I like how cool this was. That's why I like it.
People love the Lando's limo driver in Rise of Skywalker because it reminded them of a Muppet. That's all you need.
What was his name? His name was like Kalani. Kaole. And it was just like, yeah, sure.
So when we, okay.
Okay.
He reminds me of Beaker is the big one.
Yeah, because it has that head shape.
Yeah. And the mouth, the way it moved down.
I think it's a woman, by the way.
Yeah. I think
that's my schmodown studying for you coming 2 years later.
I walked out of that viewing of chapter 23 at Celebration, like thinking, like, oh man, people are gonna lose their mind over this episode online. Everyone's gonna love it. But then I remembered I felt that way when I walked out of The Last Jedi, and I thought
You
that way when I
definitely
walked
did.
out of The Rise of Skywalker.
He said that to me when he walked out of the theater, and I went like this.
I was like, thank God people aren't going to be brawling over this movie, and they
I was-
still did. So at least I think I was more right this time.
Ben
Finally,
Solo
that
is
most
dead.
people did like that episode. So, but I really enjoyed season 3. So I think this was a nice little sort of fun recap, checking in on what those actors thought and what could have been. But anything else before we get out of here?
Should I try to do one more impression?
Yeah,
Go for it.
What should I say? I need a phrase.
Your pepperoni. Hold on. Your pepperoni
I don't
pizza
wanna-
hot
I don't-
pockets are cold.
That's such a. I meant like a normal thing that she says, so I can hear the tone in my head.
Well,
Not like-
they have to eat at some point. I'm sure they're on the go. They got a micro. They don't have the forge instead of the microwave.
Wait, what? What, pepperoni pizza is now cold?
Your pepperoni pizza hot pockets are now cold.
Your pepperoni pizza hot pockets are now cold.
Pretty good.
Now, when we get her on the show,
Not cold
we'll have
hot
her do
pockets.
that line.
Hear your
We'll have to
impression.
have her, we'll have to
Burn
have
your
her
mouth.
do that line.
This is the way.
Yeah. And Greg Grumberg, let us know what JJ said, please. If you're watching.
Are you plugging your nose when
No,
you're
I'm just
doing
going
it?
like this.
Oh, okay. I thought you were doing like.
James is like, are you plugging?
This
your...
is the way.
No, I'm not putting them in. I'm pushing out the sides.
Round
You
of
are a
applause. Great job, Lacey.
Mandalorian no more.
Good job.
Thank you.
James, any impressions or anything else before we get out of here?
No impressions. I think I
James is like,
I did
don't
the
do
thing
voices.
that you did, John, talking about like walking out of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Because I got online and I was like, best season of Mandalorian yet. And the only like I did not get one agreeable comment. Every single one of them was like no or like worst one yet and all this stuff. And I was like, oh man. So I guess people aren't reacting to it the same way I did. And then I looked at the numbers and I using IMDb, which is not the best, but I just was like, this is just a general comparison. And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, season 3 definitely has the lowest numbers. Even when you like look at episode to episode, like it just didn't stack up as far as that goes. So there was that, but I don't know. I kind of like season 3. Like I had a good time with it. And I thought like,
yeah,
it started mid. It didn't start like big, but it started mid. And I felt like throughout the season, it just grew and escalated. Other than a couple random episodes that kind of were like, there was a lot of Pershing in that one episode. And I'm like, okay, it's fine.
Mhm.
But it almost feels like, people were saying, oh, the Mandalorian shows up and takes over Book of Boba Fett's show. And I'm like, what Pershing like has an entire episode where he's just like doing this stuff and it almost doesn't have anything to do with the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody said anything about that.
Yeah, I'm
That
like,
reminded me.
he's like not even in it the whole episode.
And then
Yeah.
I know this is one of those things that you had brought up earlier, James. I feel like that episode was obviously building to the clones at the end, but also later to something else.
Mhm.
But to me, that's why I was so nervous about the mind flare in the last episode, because I was like, there has to be a reason they brought this in now. And there really wasn't currently.
Yeah, I don't think, obviously, none of these episodes are filler, but I also don't
James.
necessarily know. I also
You are a Star Wars fan? No more.
no more. I don't think any of these episodes are
Canceled,
filler.
dude.
That's not the thing. But what I will say is I think that they are supposed to just be enjoyed for what they are, and they don't always necessarily have to like have payoff. Like I think some of these are just like you're just supposed to enjoy the Mandalorian taking the frog lady to see her husband, and it's like I don't think frog husband and frog lady are coming back for the movie, with
Yeah.
swords.
They did have frog people at the table with Jack Black, though.
Yeah. And I mean, and I get that.
You did.
And just sometimes I kind of I'm looking at all of the episodes and I'm like, well, that episode sort of gave us something towards the end, but at the end, like, it was just kind of fun episode that moved us from here to
You almost
there.
said filler.
And
You
that's
almost said filler.
in seasons. What?
You almost just said filler. You're like, fun.
Oh, no. Yeah, just like it was fun here and there for these reasons or those reasons. But again, like I think season 1, season 2, season 3, they all sort of had those episodes. It's just it's when those episodes drop on that week, people go online and goes, what was the point of that episode? You know?
Yeah. Yep.
Bring back Luke
well,
Skywalker.
Yeah.
we will see what happens. Mando season 4, maybe 2 years from now, but I don't think we've seen the last of these characters before then anyway. But you have seen the last of the Mando fan show, because that takes us to the end of this season and this show. So thanks everybody who has listened, watched, been a part of what we have done this season on the Mando fan show. We really, really appreciate it very much. And we couldn't do it without your support and our support from our patrons as well. So if you are able to, head to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Our tiers start at $5 per month. There's a lot of cool benefits, perks, and rewards on there as our thank you, including additional content, of course. But I want to do a special shout out to our generals and spice runners, CARMELO, John RISI, JETTA ROSEWATER, Frank Grande, DARTH HURICANE, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, DANI, Mike Rumore, Matt HEATH, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Paul Sullivan, Aaron Ellington, Diana, Micah Harrison, Chris White, Colin Cormier, Hass Aslam, Ryan WAARA, and Jolton Jedi DiMaggio. And Spice Runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, KENDALL, GELNER, Dave HORNAK, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry. Thank you all so much. And to everybody for, whether you just listen, you watch, whatever, however you support and take in TRB, thank you very much. For me, Johnny Hoey on Twitter, tweeting about the Yankees or Star Wars or other movies, something like that. And my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We got Braveheart coming up next week. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran, and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran. And you can find me here on the channel in the upcoming week doing videos about visions and other cool, exciting things leading into May 4th.
Yep.
Yes.
I was going to say, for me, Twitter and Instagram at Meyer Trunks, but I'm very excited about talking visions next week, which will probably be a TRB live thing as it drops.
Yes.
So
we'll
get excited, because
it once again proves that there's something for everyone in Star Wars, and Visions is a prime example of that. Like, you can go through that season and I can think of like certain episodes that people are going to love just based on who they are. I mean, even the three of us, I'm interested to see what these guys' favorite episodes are, because they know mine. So
yeah, I'm watching it. Probably I'm going to run through them tomorrow and then gather my thoughts, and we'll talk about it next week. Then we also have the pie bet video coming. And then for patrons, we have other food-based videos coming. So check it out. But we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you Monday morning with another episode right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.